lighting in the background now. We're slowly becoming, oh, you can't see it because the microphone's in the way, but on YouTube, you can see it. So we are slowly upgrading the studio here. We got a cool YouTube light in the background, even though the camera on my computer doesn't go too well. Um, this is going to be an important talk because I know, and I'll try to be creative with my language here, but I've been getting a lot of questions, particularly this week, about certain things coming back. Right? What are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? How are you going to stay free from it? And the truth is, the way you stay free and resilient and keep your ability to critically think is to be resilient and healthy enough to not need what they're selling. See, now, like in the Western world, we have now gotten to a point where, like, everyone, not everyone, but most people are chronically sick, statistically speaking. What's going on, Azim? How you doing? Like, chronically. So, and we are at a point in America right now where 60% of people have a diagnosed chronic disease, 40% have multiple, and over 50% of kids have a chronic disease. And we're almost touching 80% of people, almost. It's over 70, are either overweight or obese. And you see how this feeds into a system where so many people are told, oh, well, it runs in your family, or, oh, you have some MTHFR mutation or a COMT mutation, or all this. That is the reason that everything is wrong. That this one thing that was switched a certain way, that is the reason that everything's off. I need to start, but we need to blow that out of the water right now, because here's the actual truth. If any of you own a dog, you may have had a dog that's had a flea before. And that little flea that hides in the fur or hair of that dog is 50% more complex. If you were genetically speaking, if you're counting up the genes, we know humans have roughly 20,000. That little flea has about 30,000. So that little flea, genetically speaking, is 50% more complex than you and me and everyone who made all this technology that we're talking on and communicating with. So pretending that this one thing that was turned on and off is the ultimate reason for everything that you're dealing with and how you should feel stuck. And someone's going to tell you, yeah, this one thing that you can't see or feel or perceive is the reason that you have all of these problems. This is why, first of all, good thing you're here. Second of all, we need to rearrange the way we look at things. We need to really get back to a point where we have to realize the inputs that we have dictate the outputs. And it is what we do. It's what we expose ourselves to. It's what we put in our bodies. It's who we chat with. It's all of this is the stuff that matters. See, you're born, you look like, your mom and dad. But when we die, when we pass on into the next life or go into the next life, we actually look more like our decisions than mom and dad. So it's the habits, it's the things that we do every day that are going to be the ultimate determinants of what happens. And the sooner that we, as a collective consciousness, come to that realization, the sooner we're going to get to some real answers, and the sooner that we're going to get to some real improvement, some real guidance from a lot of the named organizations that are supposed to be helping us, and stop pretending that it's this one thing that you can't see and there's nothing you can do about it, because there is. Nature doesn't make mistakes. Nature does not create defects. It is largely our own doing. And that's important to know, because that means we're also the answer. And that's pretty damn cool if you ask me. So how does this relate to the immune system, and how are you going to support yourself if and when some of this stuff comes back? We need to realize that the body, primarily, there's 5 main processes that the body needs to go through on a regular basis. And that is assimilating nutrients, getting rid of waste, excreting waste, growth, reproduction, both on the cellular level and on the species level, and then adaptation, the ability to adapt. And health is very simple. If you are doing things that improve your ability to assimilate nutrients, excrete waste, grow, reproduce, and adapt, health gets better. If you are doing things that negate, that are going to shut down or inhibit your ability to assimilate nutrients, excrete waste, grow, reproduce, adapt, health gets worse. And we have spent so much time looking for things that we can't see that we forget the easy, basic stuff that fundamentally runs everything. So, what does that mean when we come to the immune system? The immune system is kind of itself like a little bit of an abstract term because it's not really a system per se. It has some organs that are associated with it, but really everything's involved in the immune system, right? Your digestive system's part of it, your nervous system's part of it, your lungs, your circulatory system. Sure, we have like the thymus and lymph nodes and spleen and all these things that play a role in immune system function, but really all of these organs are actually interconnected. They all are going to play a role in dictating how well that system functions. So it's not just like it's one thing. So, and this is why we need to come more back into our own wisdom, that innate knowledge, that innate intelligence, if you will, that the body has, and start relying on that a little bit more. And what I mean by that is this, like fundamentally, there are really only going to be three primary sources that are going to lead to what we call disease or sickness. And really, they're just three things. That's certainly emotional stress. That will certainly affect how you sleep, your how much you move, your mood throughout the day. All these things are going to be linked to that. So one way to kind of deal with that would be to look at that, realize it's just a mirror, right? It's a how you react is a mirror. And you need to actually be able to look in that mirror and realize, how is this triggering me? And what is that work that I need to do so that I can move through that, move past it a little bit more smoothly? That's one thing. So that's going to play a role in your immune system. But again, three main things. We have physical, chemical, emotional stresses. Physical, we talked about the emotional. The physical, certainly it could be past traumas, injuries, work, not a lack of movement, a lack of sleep. All of these things are going to be physical stressors. And then we have the chemical, which is a lot of what we talk about on more of a regular basis, right? Toxic foods, pesticides, non-native EMFs, lack of sleep, an inability to assimilate nutrients. So some sort of digestive dysfunction, right? Most of our immune system is located around that gut lining, roughly around 80% of it. So if our digestion is inhibited, if we're not having bowel movements on a regular basis, if we're not cleaning the things out that need to be cleaned out, whether they are old drug deposits or toxic foods or imbalances, which are more common, this is going to affect your ability to assimilate nutrients and excrete wastes. So if something is debilitating, diminishing one of those two primary functions, that is going to inhibit your immune system and your ability to function at peak levels, at optimal health. So, and that is, again, fundamentally the filter that we're going to look at this through. Is something going to improve or inhibit assimilating nutrients, excreting waste, growth, reproduction, ability to adapt? That's it. We're going to keep coming back to that because that's ultimately what it comes down to. And if the answer is yes, it improves it, good, do it. And if the answer is no, we need to figure out ways to trim that stuff out of your life. That's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, like a lot of us have started trading a lot of the conveniences that modern life brings us. And what we're seeing, what have we gotten back for that? We've gotten, again, we talked about the overweight, obese thing earlier. We're projected now 1 in 2 people are going to end up with cancer. 1 in 5 have what we call an autoimmune response to things. 1 in 10 have a liver disease. 1 in 20 are depressed. 1 in 3 seniors die with dementia. What happened to when we were supposed to look at our elders as the wise ones? Like, this stuff is getting normalized, and it's not normal. 74% have a chronic digestive disorder. Again, one and two, it's going to affect assimilating nutrients and excreting waste. That's 3 out of every 4 people, 74%. This is why when I talk about cleansing and detox, like this is step one for the vast majority of people, because we get so focused on, oh, I need nutrient X, oh, I need nutrient Z. Like these are dangerous assumptions to make for a couple of reasons. One, it assumes we know all the nutrients and how everything works. And spoiler alert, we don't. And I have newsletters on this. You can read them on my website. The first one goes into this a bit. There's going to be some on sunlight coming out. Then we're going to go into it more. The other thing that's a really big part of it is, are you excreting it? So like if if you wanted to do a detox or cleanse, like, are you having bowel movements every day? Because if you're not, that's got to be step one. Because if you're not able to get rid of the stuff that's already there, it's going to lead to backups. You're going to have toxins that are recirculating. Why? Because you're not eliminating them. So it's really important that we kind of understand that. And which is why it's so important, like if you're doing this for the first time, like have a guide so like you can understand like where to start, and everyone's a little different based on their history, things of that nature, but it's all going to play a role. And this is going to affect how you think. This is going to affect your mood, how you feel. Why? We have what is called the vagus nerve that's supposed to connect our brain and gut, that gut brain connection you probably heard so much about. 90% of those fibers, those nerve fibers, so it's a two-way street, right? You have some going from the brain to the gut. You have most going from the gut to the brain. Actually, 90% is sensory information going to the brain. So that flora, that microbiome, that is trillions of bacteria and fungi, and it's an ecosystem. We are walking ecosystems. If there is imbalances or overgrowths, and remember, the only reason there would be an overgrowth of fungi or parasites, these are actually nature's cleanup crew. These things do not happen for no reason. If we and you can see this, you can observe this in nature. If there is, God forbid, a dead animal that's in the woods, over time, that's going to decompose, right? What is doing that? It's usually maggots. It's going to be parasites. There are still, believe it or not, maggot therapy is done in hospitals today. Maggot debridement is done to clean out wounds. Why? Because nature eliminates the weak or the dead in favor of the strong. So it is on us to make sure that we are strong so we do not become hosts, if you will, for these imbalances. And when we make that shift, because fungal overgrowths, parasites, they're not the cause of whatever's going on. There is a weakness that allows them to come in and cause problems. And they're not even causing problems. They're actually doing what they're supposed to do. That gives us symptoms. And our symptoms are really just a wake-up call. They're doing what they're supposed to do because they're in their environment. We have so many folks now like screaming from the rooftops about cholesterol. It's a similar concept, actually. So like cholesterol helps lower inflammation. Fungi, what we call parasites, are essentially trying to do the same thing. They're trying to clean out the dead or decaying tissue or not functioning tissue that we are not respecting. It's the same thing. So how does this come in? To brain health, we have that connection between the two, and this is going to come into immune system health too. Why? Because again, most of that information is going to the brain. So what we put in our body, not just the food and nutrition, but the prescription or over-the-counter medications, heavy metals, hormone disruptors, endocrine disruptors. These could be things like pesticides. They can be plastics. They can be tap water. Like it can be any of these things. But it's, we have to clean those up first. Sleep, certainly. Like If we're not getting the quality sleep that we need, it's going to affect your brain for a big reason. One is you're not going to get the oxygen you need. And if the brain's not getting the oxygen you need, well, we already know that that is linked to early onset dementia or Alzheimer's. And we're wondering why this is becoming more common. Again, not normal. None of this is normal. We need to stop normalizing it because that assumes that people are defective or run by their genes, which very little of our life actually is. The other reason why this is important is because 80% of our immune system resides in the gut. And why this is important and why I spend so much time talking about this is because this is actually the way that we are going to cure and heal people going forward. 80% of our immune system aligns that gut lining. It's You could call it gut associated lymphoid tissue. This is where primarily our lymphatic system is. Why? Because that's where our immune system, our white blood cells, and antibodies and all these things reside. They're in that. It's the interface between the two. Because you have to remember, we have two main fluids in the body. We have blood, we have lymph, and they are separated. The blood is essentially functioning like the kitchen does, right? It delivers nutrients to tissues so that it can get what it needs, whether it's glucose or oxygen or other things. Like whatever it needs, it delivers it, right? The lymph, on the other hand, cells like us need to use up oxygen, use up glucose to make energy. And then there are waste products that are produced. Cells like us have to go to the bathroom, if you will. They have to excrete those wastes. And if we're not getting rid of those the way we should, it's going to be an issue. And what is 80% of that fluid in our body? It's actually lymph fluid, it's the interstitial fluid. This is all cleaned up through the lymphatic system. And what it's supposed to do is get this fluid cycled out of the body and eventually excreted, usually through the kidneys. This is why kidney weakness is such an important part of this, because so many people have weakened kidneys. And unfortunately, like, real symptoms usually don't come about until there's a lot of damage. Now it's happening younger and younger. I've actually had people I know that I grew up with that are around my age, that are, say, like around 30-ish years old, who have symptoms of gout, which is wild. Which, if you know anything about it, like, is usually something that happens later in life, but these things are happening younger and younger. Why? Because this burden is so much higher, and we're adding so many acidic, inflammatory foods and environmental factors into our world, into our individual environments at a rate that's literally never been seen before. So we got to take this stuff a little bit seriously here. And this is ultimately like how we have to go about, you know, boosting our immune system. Like, this is another thing. Like, so when we're talking about, these mandates and therapies, one of the things they do, and again, with most things in the immune system, when we're talking about that, there's two main branches, if you will. And what the therapies do is they're called TH1 and TH2. And generally speaking, if you want a properly functioning immune system, you want a balance between TH1 and TH2. TH2, primarily speaking, is your antibody response. So it's going to focus mostly on, antibodies and, that kind of cascade. What the therapies do, these types of therapies, is they trigger this TH2 response. And because it skips the TH1, which is really the initial primary response, if you will, it leads to an improperly built response in the immune system over time. And when TH2, the system's dominant, it's going to it can leave you more prone to things like fungal overgrowths, things of that nature, that again cause a lot of the immune imbalances cause these things to come in. That's a better way to put it. Antibiotics can certainly do it. There are different therapies that can lead you more towards a TH2 dominant state, which is what most people find themselves in. Again, whether it's due to these types of therapies or different types of things. Now, how do you balance it? There are certain things you can certainly use. I would go for foods that are high in vitamin A and C and E, different types of antioxidant things that are going to help support the liver, like selenium and zinc, for sure. Herbs, I like ginger. Astragalus is fantastic. Echinacea is fantastic. Like, there's plenty of things you can do, but a lot of it's going to be stopping the things that are causing the inflammatory response. You can't replace that. Other things that can certainly do it: dairy, caffeine, alcohol are going to lead to a Th2 dominant state. These are inflammatory acidic foods that are going to have you leaning more towards that Th2 state. So, eliminating those is going to go a very long, long way. So, that's a big part of it. Fevers. Let's talk about this for a second. So again, like, we have to realize that it's the environment more so than, you know, these individual things. If we're not cleaning up the environment first and foremost, we can't expect to make real progress long term. And that's why I do what I do, essentially, is for that reason. It's so that we are doing things in a proper systematic way, but also doing it in a way that is right for you, where you're at. Because you could certainly do this too fast and feel like crap, or you could do it too slow and maybe you need to push it a little bit. And that's going to totally be up to the person, where they're at, the history, the exposure, things of that nature. We have to remember, like, first of all, Rudolf Virchow. If you don't know him, he was actually the father of germ theory. And there's a quote from him: "If I could live my life over again, I would devote it to proving that germs seek their natural habitat, diseased tissues, rather than being the cause of disease." In other words, flies don't cause garbage. This is what we've been talking about. So if you're worried about viruses, which is a story for another day, or fungal overgrowths or parasites, like, these are not causing anything. They are drawn to environments that allow them to thrive. And if that is you, we need to figure out why, and we can restore balance, because that is ultimately what this is about. It's about restoring balance. So fevers. Fevers are actually an important response. Fevers, if you didn't know, for every degree that the body temperature goes up, the speed of the immune system doubles. So by the time you're getting to, say, a 104-degree temperature, you're actually at 64 times. The immune system is working 64 times faster than it is at 98 degrees, which is kind of wild if you think about it. So, it can really, really get up there, like, really quickly. But pH chemistry is really important as well. So, we have to remember, we were talking about the blood and the lymphatic system earlier. Our blood pH is really tightly controlled. It's between 7.35, 7.45. Really tight. Doesn't really move. The kidneys, like I said, are primarily responsible for eliminating a lot of these wastes in the sewer system, the lymphatic system. And usually these are acidic in nature. So remember, if we're looking at a pH scale, it's going to be on the lower end. Why is this important? Because we have electrolytes. You might have heard of them. Our primary ones are sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Now, the blood pH number isn't actually going to really move, but what does move is our electrolyte stores. So if you hear about inflammation, one of the things of inflammation, you could also call it acidosis, or higher amounts of hydrogen, higher amounts of free radicals. Why? Because these free radicals tend to be positively charged. Our electrolytes are negatively charged. But if we're constantly using up our electrolytes to buffer the pH so it stays in that range, we're using up those stores. The body has to continue to go to the bone bank, because where are most of our minerals stored, or our electrolytes stored? They're actually in bone tissue. And you end up with osteopenia, osteoporosis if you do this often enough. Where are most of your electrolytes found? They're going to be in your fresh fruits and vegetables. just where they are. I know a lot of people love Celtic salt, and adding it to water, and you certainly could do a little bit of that, but you're going to have a much better time getting it through citrus fruits and berries and melons and like raw fruits and vegetables, because that's actually where this stuff is. So, that's a really ideal, important thing that we need to kind of keep in mind here. You can measure your urine pH as well if you want to check how your kidneys are filtering. Now, I mentioned blood pH is usually between 7.35 and 7.45. Urine pH, ideally, is going to be slightly acidic. So between 6 and 6.5 usually is ideal. You have to remember also that um, the pH scale, it's logarithmic, right? So going from 6 to 7 is not 1 point, it's actually 10 times stronger. Going from 7 to 5 is 100 times stronger. So 4 is 1,000 times stronger. So it's a logarithmic scale, it's exponential increases. So it's not like it seems small, but it's actually a logarithmic scale. So even a decimal point difference is actually quite a lot on the grand scheme of things in terms of capacity here. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind. And the way to keep that balance is primarily, again, fresh fruits and vegetables. But like, what are these things are really acidic? We know soda usually is super acidic. Usually a pH between 2.5 and 4.5. Um, some of the more acidic foods are going to be the refined grains, the dairies, the meats. These are much more on they leave an acidic ash because they don't have these electrolyte components in high enough amounts. So one is like, if you're consuming a lot of acidic mucus forming foods, we need to start moving away from that so the body can flow and maintain more of those electrolytes so that we can find that balance without going to tissues to take from them. The other part is, are our detox pathways working? Now, we talked about the colon, we talked about urination a little bit. The colon, we talked about a bit too. Why? Because that's where this ecosystem is. So, and making sure that we're having bowel movements every day, first and foremost, is step one. We have to make sure we're sweating on a regular basis. And if we're not sweating on a regular basis, why? And then respiration, how we're breathing. Are we nasally breathing? Are we belly breathing every single day? And I know it sounds like a lot, but these are the things that we need to do. This is how you improve and enhance the immune system over time. It's with all of these things. The lymphatic system moves literally when you move. That's how it moves. There is no pump, the or physical pump. The physical pump is moving. It's moving the muscles. That's why some people like rebounding, because you could use the calves as pumps, if you will. But any movement will do. You don't have to overthink this. Walking can do it. Jumping can do it. Running can do it. Any movement's going to do it. The point is, you got to do it every day. The sleep part is every day. The emotion part, we talked about it a little bit this morning. I'm really, there's plenty of tools that work. Emotion code, NET, COMT, cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, nature walks. It really doesn't matter what you pick. I think they're all valid. I think they're all good. I think it's just a question of the person. It's what resonates with you. Do you want help? Do you want a practitioner to walk you through it? Great. Get a practitioner. Do you want to do it on your own? Do you want to do the introspection on your own? Great. Shut off all the technology, go outside, go to the beach by yourself, somewhere quiet. Like, you can do this however you want. Meditation, like, there's so many different tools and they all work. It's just a question of which ones resonate with you. So if you're worried about what's coming on or what potentially could come on, I would say, first of all, don't worry. Second of all these things are in your hands. And it's just a question of finding something that you can stay consistent with long enough and stick with it. Are we getting the more alkaline foods in on a regular basis? Are we moving our bodies every day? Are we getting the sleep we need? Are we, do we have appropriate stress outlets? Are we getting in the sun? Are we putting our feet in the ground every day? because you have to do it. These are the fundamentals. And if we're not doing the fundamentals, if we're not living in nature like we're supposed to, it's going to be really tough to get to optimal health. And this is not something that's impossible. This is literally what we are designed to do as human beings, is to be vibrantly healthy. We are creating the sickest species on the planet, but we do not have to be. We absolutely do not have to be. We can be the most vibrant, resilient people ever to walk this earth. And it's just a question of the inputs. It's just a question of how we do it. And this is why, if you want to see how I do it, how I stay consistent, because right after this, I'm going outside and I'm going to make sure I'm getting my feet in the ground. I'm going to make sure that I have nothing on my eyes or anything like that so I can get all that in. I go over this in the Transform Your Health webinar. The link is in my bio. You could sign up. It's absolutely free. And I go over all of the tools that I use on a regular basis so that I stay consistent, because the last time I was sick was years ago. And it's not that I am special or different. Anyone can do this. If you want to check it out for free, check it out. The link's in my bio. I'm going to answer a couple questions here on IG. If you're on YouTube, I can certainly answer them too. Let's see what we got. By the way, if there are questions, put them in the question box. Top 3 herbs that support your immune system that I like. So I actually kind of mentioned a couple of them earlier. So astragalus, especially, is one of my favorites, especially for kids. I would say it's probably not something I would use if you're actively feeling symptoms, but it's great for building that immune system long term. So astragalus is certainly one. Echinacea is fantastic. I mentioned what I mentioned before. I mentioned ginger. I mentioned golden seal. I meant there's tons. There's tons. There's tons. But those are some of the biggest individual herbs, I would say, that are great. Yeah, garlic certainly is great. Any of the berries are going to be great. So your elderberry, I've said echinacea, all that stuff is going to be great. That's how I would start. Again, if you guys have questions, put them in the question box. Best supplements to support a 5-year-old immune system. Okay, so I actually just mentioned that. Astragalus would probably be the one I would start with. And again, like, it's more than just the herbs, right? So, the herbs are certainly going to help. And again, astragalus, I think, is pretty much great for anyone at any age. It's a great immune system tonic, fantastic for kids. And again, something I would probably do daily. You could do it in tea form for sure. It's very mild, almost like a nutty taste. But astragalus is great. That would certainly be a good one. Again, garlic is fantastic. I mean, a lot of these are great. It just depends on like the symptoms and what's going on. But like, if you're just building generally, that's a great place to start. Certainly more alkaline foods would help, making sure we're upping the fruit and vegetable intake, making sure the kids are getting outside and running around and are in the grass and all this stuff. Like, that's going to help. Sunlight, honestly, is probably like the best free medicine it is the best free medicine on the planet. It's just unfortunate that most people don't take advantage of it. What are alkaline foods? So we talked a little bit about pH. So alkaline foods essentially are foods that leave an alkaline ash when they're digested, essentially. And what dictates that are the minerals that are left over. So certain minerals are more acidic, right? So that's going to be like phosphorus, sulfur, things in that nature are going to be more acidic. More alkaline ones are going to be like your electrolytes, like I was talking about earlier, your sodium, your potassium, your calcium, your magnesium. Most people, and it's interesting, like, what is one of the most common nutrient deficiencies, supposedly nowadays? It's magnesium. Whereas magnesium, it's in vegetables, fruits, and nuts and seeds. This stuff isn't rocket science. Like, it really isn't. It's just a different way of looking at things. You can certainly Google like an acid alkaline chart. Generally speaking, what I'll tell people is, like, you want roughly 80% to be on the alkaline side of things. And that is going to be a vast departure from where most people in the Western world are. You build yourself up. I go over it on my blog. You could check it out on my newsletter as far as stepping up to that. Sometimes if people jump in too fast, they could get detox cleansing reactions. This is why people who say, like, oh, I tried plant based for like a week and I felt like crap, or a month. This is what's happening. You're actually like cleaning out your system, and most people interpret it as getting sick or not feeling good. But usually, like, they're just ignoring it. Okay. Um, what to pack for immune system for vacation? That's a good question. Um, what would I pack? There are a couple things that I like. There's one formula I really like. Um, it's called Zinc Aid. That's really good. If you go to my website and the shop, there's a link for uh to get to the Purium website, and they have a product called Zinc Aid that's really good. Um, that'd probably be a good place to start. I mean, I don't like overdoing it for kids. There's one called Immune Shield, which is again a lot of the stuff we were talking about. It's a lot of those herbs. It is what is in it? It is echinacea, astragalus, elderberry, literally all the things we talked about. Licorice, that's what I missed. Go figure. Um, so yeah, so like that's probably where I would start. Um, and that's also good for adults, by the way, just because it's called, kids immune shield. Like certainly adults can use it. The reason it's towards kids is because it's a glycerin extract, so there's no alcohol. So if you don't know, extracts, certain herbal extracts are extracted with alcohol because you could get more out of the herbs using alcohol. Obviously, you probably don't want to give that to kids. So they'll use glycerin instead, which works too, but it's not as potent as alcohol. So that's usually the difference between the two. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? Can children drink bone broth daily? I mean, you can. I guess the question would be why? I don't drink bone broth or really recommend it. I know some people ask me about it. There are certainly um other things that you can do. Vegetable broths can work just as well. If you're worried about collagen production, you have to realize it's just an amino acid thing, like proteins, collagen. You don't absorb collagen. Collagen has to be broken down into the amino acids and then reassembled. And there's no guarantee that those Legos are going to turn into the same Legos inside. So as long as you're getting the amino acids from somewhere, it really doesn't matter. That's I think a big part of it. The other thing that's really important with that is, you need the cofactors, which are vitamin C, which is pick your fruit or vegetable. It's going to have some vitamin C in it. And copper, usually. So, yeah. All right. I could do one or two more of these before I close this off here. Does lupus have a cure? Okay. So, here's the thing, like for any autoimmune response, because that's what this is I am yet to see any type of immune challenge that doesn't have a gut component to it. And the reason why is what we were talking about. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So if you're able to help start to balance that out, again, goes back to those 5 things we talked about, right? Assimilating nutrients, excreting waste, growth, reproduction, ability to adapt. Chances are somewhere those first 2 were messed up because those are the gut. It affects the other 3: growth, reproduction, ability to adapt. So it's just going back to the drawing board, figuring out what that is. And you could certainly, if you clean that up, if you start cleansing and detoxing appropriately, you can certainly see some improvement with symptoms of that in any of those cases. How deep you have to go is going to be different from person to person, depending on how long things have been going on. And there's a lot of other things that kind of go into it. But yes, the short answer is yes. Um, what would be the start to fix the gut? What I would uh, very straightforward because I wrote an entire article on it. You can check it out. Um, if you go to my website, linked in my bio, you could sign up for the newsletter. There's a new one coming out tomorrow on actually fruits and fungus. So, and then probably two I'm going to do on sunlight. So I'll show you here on IG. You go to newsletter, the healing system. That's the fundamental one that you're going to want to read. That's how you start. That's in a big picture, like how I get started with a lot of people is where you go from that and where you start is going to be dictated on, where you're at. So it kind of depends. But again, you could go to insideouthealthwellness.com, go to newsletter. It's all there. And these are detailed. Like these are like they're long. I'm going to try to start cutting them down a bit, but like this first one's like 7,500 words. So it's not like it's going to take you a second to get through. My goal here ultimately like is to serve. It's to make I'm trying to bring all of this stuff to you in a way that makes the most sense. So yeah, that's where we're at. All right, I'm gonna go. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to figure out like how to make this stuff like a lifestyle and employ like these systems that I'm talking about here, check out the webinar. The link's in my bio. Transform your health. This is how I stay on track. This is how the people I work with stay on track. It's because really the only way that we're going to get through this and make ourselves better for the long run is having a system in place that we can constantly go back to, because the motivation is not going to be there every day. You have to have that purpose, and you have to have something that you can fall back on when you're not super motivated. And that's what this does. That's what I literally help you do, so that you don't need someone like me for the rest of your life. It's so you learn the more, if you can, and this is totally free, but just like on the side, any investment that you make in your own education is going to benefit you, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing they can't take from you is your mind. So I'm hoping that you find this helpful. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day. I should be back on a live tonight around like 8:30. So that'll be fun. But yeah, have a great day. Peace.